Right now, there is a fleet of Hollywood stars arriving here in our nation's capital to spend the weekend hobnobbing with America's political elite and journalism elite at the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner, or more affectionately known among those here in the Beltway as Nerd Prom. I will not be attending the event, so I will miss President Biden's roast of himself as well as the headlining comedian. Don't worry, though. Everyone will be able to get a front row seat to this weekend's festivities thanks to CNN.
It's one of the biggest nights in D.C.
I told my grandkids and Pete Buttigieg they could stay up late and watch this show tonight.
The White House Correspondents' Dinner. Politicians, the press, and entertainers come together for a special occasion.
The weekend's festivities are billed as a, quote, celebration of the First Amendment. In reality, it is a celebration in navel-gazing and self-importance of celebrity journalists. This now is the White House Correspondents Association explaining itself on its website as being a group of journalists who, quote, share the belief that an independent news media is vital to the health of the republic. There's one word in that statement that is really important, which is independent. And if the media was indeed independent of the White House, dare I say adversarial, it would be noteworthy. It would be something worth celebrating, which is weird, because back when the press was actually adversarial to the White House, specifically during the Trump administration, Trump didn't go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which might be the way it should be. And if you want to really understand how weird the relationship is between the press corps and this president in particular, the White House press corps complained that Trump didn't go. And complain might even be too gentle of a word. They went nuts. In their words, it was an insult to the First Amendment and a bunch of other self-important nonsense. There is no more self-important group than those who stand on Pebble Beach. That's where the North Lawn has the live shot positions for all of the White House correspondents. In fact, during the Trump administration, Nerd Prom became Nerd Prom. It was decidedly uncool. Many, even in Washington, skipped it. The parties didn't matter. There weren't any celebrities. Now you're catching on. When the press does its job, suddenly celebrating the press becomes uncool. Yet Mr. Biden's attendance this year is a return to normalcy. He went last year as well. Everybody celebrated. It was great. Things were normal again, the press and the president together. And nothing shows the cozy relationship between the White House press corps than when an eagle-eye photographer snapped a shot of what seemed to be a presidential cheat sheet. You might remember this. During the South Korean president's visit, there was that press conference with Mr. Biden. He held a card with almost verbatim what the reporter was about to ask.
It is entirely normal for a president to be briefed on reporters who will be asking questions at a press conference and issues that we expect they might ask about. We do not have specific questions in advance. That's not something that we do. And in fact, I would point out the questions that was asked was different than what was on the card that you all saw.
It was different by a couple of words. Probably would not have passed a teacher who was comparing, shall we say, two fifth grade writing tests between two students accused of cheating. That was the White House trying to explain away the situation. No, it wasn't exactly verbatim the question. And to be fair, the press is one of the very few institutions with an approval rating lower than the president. We've earned it. This weekend's festivities with after parties and Instagram posts only confirm that this weekend isn't about the First Amendment. It's about selfies with celebrities and self-importance. With that in mind, seeing a reporter's question on a cue card for the president isn't that surprising. It's kind of shocking that they're that sloppy. But it's not surprising. Put it another way. Let's just for a second imagine President Trump, back when he was president, caught with a cue card of a reporter's question the week of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Just imagine what would happen to that reporter who leaked their question to the White House. They may be tarred and feathered. They could be run out of Washington. Maybe the Correspondents Association would have canceled their dinner in shame. or perhaps in protest. We could have all only been so lucky. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.